Welcome. We're going to continue our special series now and go and have a look, continue on with the Brown Brothers family group. If you were watching the episode last week, you'll remember that I went to meet with Emma Brown, the youngest member of the fourth generation in the Brown Brothers family group. She's the working within the marketing department there. Now we're going to take a little bit of a view and go and meet with her sister, Catherine, who is actually the first female winemaker within the family. So a really unique turning point for them. The interesting discussion with Catherine that I had was not only just about her perspective on what innovation is and what they're doing with the CSIRO, but also that we went into their very special underground family wine cellar. This wine cellar was actually built in another previous chaotic era. Many years ago, when there was a huge frost that wiped out their crop, they then wanted to use the staff within the business to help them do something different rather than just let them go. So there was the idea that was born, this family wine cellar. Over the years, the wine cellar has had stories of its own. It's been flooded, there's been other chaos that it's lived through, but it's kind of been this very much a centerpiece for the family on what innovation means in times when they're tough. I look forward to sharing this story with you now. Take a look at the discussion and the chat that I had with Catherine Brown at the Brown Brothers family group.
So this is the family cellar.
Oh wow.
This is where we sort of keep our library of wines.
Yep.
It's a really great opportunity for us to come down and try these wines and understand what went on in previous vintages.
So this cellar we're in here, actually, funnily enough, was built in another crisis.
Yeah, so it was a frost back in 1967. And if we get a frost in the late spring or early summer, it's really detrimental to the vines. So this frost came through, frosted all the leaves and new shoots, which was the crop for that following year. So we had a full team of people to work with us for that harvest and no grapes to harvest. So it was Uncle John and my grandfather that gave them all shovels and got them digging. And with that, we kept everyone employed, kept local families with food on the table essentially, and ended up with this beautiful cellar.
Talk us through a little bit about what it is that you do. I'm fascinated what a winemaker does.
So the role of a winemaker is really to work with our vineyard team, the viticulturists, and once we get that fruit beautifully ripe, we bring it into the winery, and that's where the magic happens. So really working with those grapes to make wine in the styles that we're after. So here at Brown Brothers we make dry red and white, we make sparkling, we also make some fruity wines and sweet wines, so the job is very busy.
You're also the fourth generation, you're Emma's sister. Talk us through a little bit about what innovation means for you with your generation and how you see the next 20 years of the Brown family wine group.
So innovation is really instilled in our family mantra. Looking at my grandfather, he'd really wanted to do things differently. So planting different varieties, talking to our customers and actually understanding what they want to drink rather than making the wine and expecting them to drink it. And with that in mind, we do that today. So we get out there and we talk to people. And we try and understand what the wine drinker who may be underage or maybe say 15 at the moment, what they're going to want to drink when they're 25. And to keep that in mind and be out there planting new varieties, working with different wine styles, so then we're ahead of the curve. Dad's always said that wine is like the fashion industry. So you're always looking at trends, but the thing is you actually have to make sure those grapevines are in the ground 5 years before the trend hits. So we always have to keep our finger on the pulse.
I'm fascinated that you're talking about trends, Catherine, because I'm really interested to understand how you as a family business apply those to be able to understand where you're going to go from the future. I'm also interested to understand what you're doing with the CSIRO in developing new varieties. How are you working on that?
So the CSIRO are a government body in Australia that are looking for agriculture in the future.
Yep.
And so we work with them to put the vines, what they've been working on, their new projects, in a commercial vineyard setting to understand how they would work and whether they're sustainable for the future. From that, we have about 6 different varieties that we now bring in, and each year we're looking at different winemaking methods, because sometimes a grape may be really good as a dry style but not so good as a sweet style, and then vice versa. So we play around with these different styles each year, and along the way we found a jackpot, and Sienna has been an example of one of those jackpots. It was a wine we made as a dry style for a number of years, and it just wasn't hitting the consumer taste buds. Then we flipped that round, made it in a style similar to Moscato, so fruity with a bit of fizzanti, and it's now one of the best-selling red wines in Australia.
And for want of a better word, that sounds like a bit of a pivot. What led you into that innovation?
You could really say winemaking is about trial and error at times, but we actually talked to the customer, and we realised that people were looking for an easier drinking red wine, something that you could enjoy sort of around a barbecue or even with a piece of chocolate. So that's where we got the idea of making this red wine in a really different way that would appeal to those consumers and new consumers to wine.
In spite of all the history that we've got in this room here, this is your very private family cellar. Our world at the moment above us is going through an enormous amount of change. What do you see is the big shift that we're seeing in consumer change, in the change of consumers' tastes and habits, whether we look at the younger generation, that there's the decline in alcohol consumption, or whether we're looking at China that are developing their tastes in wine? How do you see that all playing out?
The next generation of wine consumers, they want to keep drinking wine. We love wine, but I think it's a bit of less is more, so moderation. And with that, we're looking at making wines that are lower alcohol, that can be enjoyed in daytime settings. Enjoy wine for longer is really the way I look at it. So red wines that you could have with a barbecue in the summer, and fruitier style low alcohol whites, I think are really the wines that are going forward. Also, refreshing styles such as rosé has been a really big boom, but also looking at rosés that come in at a lower alcohol, so you can enjoy that second glass. And people say stay in control, but it's that sort of overall health and well-being that people are really interested in.
Catherine, you're also a new mum. Little Harry is 9 months old. If you look into the future as a mum, also with your Brown family cap on as well, what do you hope for the future that we all learn out of this COVID-19 era, the chaos that's going on? What's your one hope, if you had one thing that you hope that comes out of all of this?
I hope that people realise how important people time is, like actually being around people, having real conversations. And I feel over the last 5 years we've got lost in our devices. You go for coffee with a friend and they're looking on their phone. So coming out of this, actually being able to spend time with people again, make that time real.
Catherine, thank you so much, not only for showing me around your family cellar here this afternoon, but also talking to me about your view for the future.
Pleasure, thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine, for the incredible story there, and what a beautiful underground wine cellar. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank Show Division, my team who run the studio here, and my Director of Photography, Andrew Ware. Tune in next week because we're going to be meeting the oldest surviving members of the Brown Brothers family group, and they'll be telling us a little bit of a story about some of the chaos that they've dealt with in the past and how that's got them to where we are today. They have a really unique perspective also on what the future looks like and what the secret ingredients are to running an incredibly successful family wine